right, welcome back. In this part 6 of our Skeet tutorials, we're going to look at constructing the pigeon-seeking missile, the PSM. Now I've done a little bit of work off camera here that should be fairly familiar. What I've done is I've just brought in the retro rocket from our past project, from our retro rocket runner, and inside of there I've put a bunch of flares in the back just to give it some visual effect. You could put the afterburner or whatever you want. Basically just kind of making it so that it visually does some fun things. The other things that are important about this though is that this retro rocket I've added a rigid body to the object, made sure that its mass is really high. I'm turning off gravity for the object because I want it to do its work. And second, I'm making sure that it's got a box collider because we're going to need to make sure that when this thing hits something, we know that it's actually struck a surface. Okay, so with this retro rocket, I'm going to rename my retro rocket as a PSM missile. I know a PSM pigeon-seeking missile, but we're calling the gun the PSM. And then I'm going to take this and make it a prefab by dragging it over into the project window. Yes, I'll make an original prefab here so that we've got that set up. Now the idea here is that now whenever I want to launch a PSM, I can just simply instantiate that PSM missile from our project. Okay, so let's keep working with our on our script holder. Remember that we've got our weapons script. Let's continue to build off of our weapons script. So here, let's go ahead and put in a new section. We'll call this header PSM stuff. And let's make sure that it is aware of, first of all, this will just be a game object in this case. This will be our PSM missile. And let's go ahead and while we're at it, let's make sure that we have a PSM launch point. So I'll just do this one as a transform. Launch point. Let's use a few less characters. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that in there. Let's go and tie everything together before we get too far into building any of our other things. So this will ask us now when this compiles, it will ask us for where the PSM missile is. So we'll drag the PSM missile in here, and second of all, it needs to know what the launch point is. Now that launch point is, I'm going to stick that kind of out on the end of our PSM. So that's going to be a child of our first person character, which is the camera. So with this object, let's go ahead and I'm going to frame that for a second, create an empty game object. Now remember, this empty game object is the positive Z is the front. Now we could really use that positive Z. I mean, we don't have to use that looking at the front. It's just that so far all of our scripts have been working with vector3.forward. And so if we continue on with that same format, then just making sure the positive Z in the front will do what we kind of want it to do. Okay, so this is going to be our PSM launch point. I'm going to make sure that that PSM launch point is a child of the PSM, of the geometry there, so that we've got that space to launch off of. And then let's make sure that our weapon script knows where that is. The idea here, of course, is that when we press the fire button, it's going to instantiate that PSM, and that PSM will go firing off. Now, this PSM, though, is going to do some things differently. This isn't going to just be a rocket. We want this to be a smart rocket so that when the missile goes off, then it finds the first pigeon that it can find, and we're going to have it find by tag, and then it's going to follow that pigeon as it goes. Now, because this is going to be a smart missile, we want to have a script that defines how that missile works. So let's create a C# script that I'm going to call PSM missile script. I always misspell missile. Let's come into the missile script and let's introduce a few new ideas for how this works. The first thing that we need to make sure that happens is we need to make sure that this object knows who its target is. So let's we'll make a public for now. Let's make a public variable that's going to hold a game object that we're going to call target. Now let's have it that right on start, it's going to populate that. So on a start method, let's come in and we're going to define what target is. Now we've already worked with this idea of GameObject.find, and this finds things by name, right? The name of something. But what we want to do is now we want to find something not by name but by tag. So there's a method built in called findWithTag. And then what this does is you tell it which object you want it to find. So in this case, of course, we want to find objects that are tagged as pigeon. Now, notice there are actually, there's multiple versions. There's find with tag and there's find objects with tag. Some of them actually create an array. In this one, we just want to find a single object, which is why we're using find with tag. Okay, so let's see if this, let's see how this works just to begin with. So what I'm going to do is let's make sure that this script is attached to our PSM, and then I'm going to make sure we've got a PSM out in the scene. So there's my PSM missile. Let's come down here and add our PSM missile script. And then I'm just going to drag this one out here just so we can see its functionality. Okay, so if I'm looking at this missile, you'll see that the target right there is listed as none. What will happen is that when I play, then you can see that immediately that got filled in with dragon. So we can look and it looks like the first one that it found is that dragon. Which is fine. That will work out well. So let's just for our example's sake, let's take dragon, condor, and chicken, and these are just our stand-in here to test stuff. Oops, missed condor, dragon, and chicken, and I'm going to just slide those back away from the camera a little bit. Okay, so what we know now is that we know that that PSM missile is that it goes out and it finds the first thing, in this case dragon, that is tagged as pigeon, right? It's tagged as pigeon. Now the idea that we want to have happen is that as this, once it identifies the target, we want it to every frame look at that target and every frame move towards that target. Now there's a couple different ways that we can do this. We definitely want this to happen every frame though, so let's go ahead and put this in the update. I'm going to also make this so that it's not public because we don't need to actually see it now that we know that it's working. But here what we'll do is I'm going to first of all have it look at the target every frame. So we've already used this before, but we're going to use transform.lookAt. And we'll look at target.transform.position so that every frame it's actually looking at it. Okay, so we're going to use transform.position move towards. Transform.position move towards has 3 arguments. The way that it looks like is this. So we'll use transform.position. This will be equal to vector3.move towards. Move towards has 3 arguments. It's its current position is the first argument, its target position, which is the second argument, and then how much we're going to allow it to move in a frame. So let's say that we're going to do 0.5f. Its current position, of course, is wherever it is at that particular frame. So we'll use transform.position. And its target position is going to be wherever the target's at. So we'll use target.transform.position. Okay, so every frame what's happening is that it's looking towards the target, and every frame it is moving towards wherever that target is at. So let's take a look and see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then we'll come over and take a look at it in Unity. All right, so what should happen here? Oh, it looks like we got it. Let's see, I think that's just a glitch. Okay, so what should happen there is as we're looking at this missile, when we hit play, we should see it identify probably the dragon because it's the first thing, and then it's going to start moving towards that dragon. So if I hit play, let's give it a look and zoom right towards the dragon and kind of keeps pushing towards the dragon, keeps pushing. Okay, so what we want it to do, of course, is that when it reaches the dragon, then it's going to go ahead and explode, do some other work for us. All right, let's look a little bit more about how this would function in the wild, though. So let's take dragon, condor, and chicken out so that they're no longer here. And instead of having this just kind of launch off, I'm going to make sure that that we actually fire it when we do fire the PSM. So let's come back into our script, into our weapon script, and let's start to build that mechanism in. So here's where we have, if we press fire 1, if you're pistol, do that stuff. So here we'll just minimize that. If you're the RPG, do this stuff. And now it's time to actually do the PSM. So if we press fire 1 and the active weapon is PSM, now remember we're changing this down here when we're doing the weapon swapping when we press 1, 2, or 3. If the active weapon is indeed PSM, what we want to do is instantiate our newly built PSM at the PSM launch point. But once we've instantiated it, then it's smart. It does its own work, so we don't have to do any of the velocity or any of that work here. So we'll just write the instantiate, and we want to instantiate the PSM missile. We want to instantiate it at the PSM launch point dot transform dot position. PSM launch point, is that a, oh, it's already a transform. Okay, so PSM launch point dot position, and we want to use the PSM launch point dot rotation as its rotation value. Okay, so all we're doing is we're just kind of berthing it in this spot, and then it will run off and do the work that it needs to. Okay, so back in Unity, let's just double check to make sure that we're all good and all set up. So let's look at our script holder, and our script holder, it knows the PSM missile is not the target launcher. I must have dragged the wrong thing in. So PSM missile, and the launch point should be fine. Okay, so what will happen here, let's make sure and turn on these other guns just so that we can see them. That's the RPG, PSM pistols. Okay, so when we play the game, then 1, 2, 3, we can do that. What will happen is that you saw that actually go firing back behind us. And in fact, no matter where I point, you can see that rocket kind of shooting behind us. And the reason is that here, let's go take a look at this, is each of these PSM clones, if you'll take a look at, oh, I don't have it public anymore, but they are chasing the very first one of these that went off, probably this Condor clone. And so they're still chasing it and chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. And so no matter where I fire and how I fire, they're still all chasing after that same one. So I need to do several things. First of all, when that missile actually catches up to a target, we need it to explode. And we need to go and then change the scorekeeper. So let's look at some of the same stuff. We could actually probably put this same script on there. Or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this content here from this one so that I've got it all in one script. And I'll go ahead and paste it here. I'm going to move this global variable up here just so we have all that stuff together. But what this does is that it keeps chasing until it actually reaches, it actually hits something, and then it will explode. And it does that if it hits anything else, but in particular we want it to do that when it hits the pigeon. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's come back over here, take a look at it. We're going to have to tie a few things together here. So we'll take the PSM missile. That PSM missile will now need to know who explosion is. So we'll just use the trusty one that's built into the standard assets. That's worked out pretty good. Let's see, particle systems, and then let's just take explosion and plug it in there so that it'll be set to work. Now let's give this a try. We'll go ahead and play this. So when I hit 3 and I fire that, then you can see it chasing it, and then assuming that it's going to be able to find that, see it never, I don't think it ever caught it. That's funny. You could see it actually chasing after it, but it couldn't catch it. That's funny. Let's make sure that, oh, chasing after that one, but that's in fact, it's still going after that. Still going after that other one. So let's change the speed on those for just a minute because they're just running too fast. Okay, Condor, Dragon. I'm going to take each of these and reduce them by a factor of 10. So just for now. So let's do 2, and this dragon here, let's do 5. Just so I can see what's happening here a little bit easier. Okay, so when I hit 3, so there's the chicken, should go running off and hit that chicken, and then runs off and hits that next chicken. And in fact, these chickens are moving so slowly that we're still going to have some problems. All right, so that's going to hit the next chicken, and then this should go after one of those. So no matter where I fire, that missile is going to run off and grab it. Now, here's the problem, though. We can see that condor coming there. I'm going to fire 2 of these, one right after another. And you see that the first one did fine, but the second one is now lost. It doesn't know what to do. In fact, we can see it flying right there. You can see every frame it's firing an error. The reason for that is that when we fired the first missile, it went and destroyed it, but the second one, when it came into existence, identified the first known pigeon. But since the first pigeon destroyed that pigeon, once it was gone, then that pigeon-seeking missile no longer knew who to go after. So we want to allow this to do a little bit better work. First, what I'm going to do is, I don't want it to do this every frame. I'm going to only do this if it knows who the target is. So to do this, what I'll do is create an if statement and say if target is not equal to null. That means that if the target bucket is not empty, then go ahead and go try and catch it. Otherwise, if it is empty, let's put an else statement in here. If it is empty, then go and find a new target. So we'll use target is equal to GameObject.findWithTag. We'll use just, see, find, which one I should use? Find with tag. And then we'll use pigeon. Let's actually check to see if we can use find game object with tag. Yeah, let's use find game object with tag. Oops, I think that's probably a better way to do this. Find game object with tag. Okay, so if the bucket is not empty, it means you know who the target is, go chase it. If you don't know who the target is, go find the next one that's listed as pigeon. So let's come back over here, take a look, clear all of our errors. So what will happen here is if we give this a try, I hit 3 and I fire, that one goes off, blows that one up, that's fine. Now let's fire 2 of them. You see the first one does it, and then the second one went and found the next target. So if we fired, let's fire 2 of them real quick. One will go and find there, and then the other one runs over and grabs the other. Now we're not going to want our thing to fire that fast, but this is the basic idea. Now the one thing that I do want to have happen though is that we saw that there is kind of a weird thing that sometimes happens that if our missile isn't running as fast as one of our targets, then that target could keep flying away and that missile could keep chasing it forever. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a big destroyer kind of over here on the back. So I'm going to create empty game object. I'm going to make a box collider with it, and this one I'm going to go ahead and make as a trigger. With this trigger, I'm going to make this thing really big. This is going to be the great destroyer of pigeons. Later we'll probably also use this to count how many pigeons get away from us. But for now, let's go ahead and make that really big. I just want to make sure that that thing is big enough that nothing is able to escape it as it goes shooting past us. Okay, so this will be our, we'll call this our pigeon destroyer that we've got set up here. Let's go ahead and make sure that we create the script that will do this. So inside of my scripts folder, I'm going to make another script that I'm going to call pigeon destroyer script. The pigeon destroyer script is going to do some fairly simple things. We'll just come in here and say on trigger enter, what we want to do is destroy the thing that entered us. So the thing that entered us is going to be other. So we'll just do other dot, oops, let's destroy other dot game object, so that it destroys the other thing that comes in. Now we could do a few more things maybe that are a little more elegant. For instance, let's come in and let's find out if other dot game object dot tag is equal to pigeon. Then go ahead and destroy it. This will just make sure that it doesn't end up destroying missiles that we don't want, or other sort of rockets that might be flowing through there. But that will go ahead and destroy everything that is a missile that flies through. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, come back to Unity. Here we'll make sure that pigeon destroyer script ends up on the pigeon destroyer. Let's just make sure that it's there. So what should happen now is if we increase the speed again, so let's say our chicken was running at 10, let's say that our condor was running again at 25, and let's say our dragon was running again at 50, then what should happen here, let's look at our pigeon destroyer so that it sees there, is that as we start firing targets, whether we hit them or not, then these pigeons, when they hit the destroyer, end up getting turned off. Okay. What that will mean is that as I'm using my pigeon seeking missile, it might run and find one. But what it also means, here I'll have it try and shoot that one. When it doesn't find that one, then it'll go and find the next one as soon as that thing's available. So you see it got away, it's just hanging out, and then, oh look, there's another one. Right, and it goes and gets it. Okay, so we now have 3 weapons, 1, 2, and 3. All of them work, all of them change the score. What we need to do now is make sure that we can't, it's pretty tough to lose a game when you can just create all these pigeon-seeking missiles that automatically hang out and then just as a flock go and attack any new pigeons that come into existence. So we need to start building a reload mechanism. So we'll do that in the next chapter.